Good morning. I'm Richard Bookwalter, President of the California Board of Occupational Therapy, and I'd like to call our May 3rd, 2024 meeting to order. It's 9:20 a.m. May we have a roll call?
Board Member Cabrera, Board Member Miller,
Here.
Board Member Pavlovich,
Here.
Board Member Witzelsbach,
Here.
Secretary Doe here, Vice President Marcos,
Here.
President Bookwalter.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone here today at the Department of Consumer Affairs for our the second day of our two-day meeting. We have let me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 board members in person, 1 board member remote. Our executive officer is going to join us remotely, as well as, of course, members of the public through via WebEx. At this time, I just want to welcome everyone and get started. I do want to point out that we have one agenda item from yesterday, number 11, the Ad Hoc Committee on Supervision Standards update, which that we didn't have time for yesterday. So we're going to move that onto today's list because we do have guests giving us presentations. I'd like to move it till after, so give people an opportunity to speak first. So we're going to move it to before 20. Just before item number 20. So it would be after the legislative and regulatory affairs update on number 19. At this time, I'd like to offer board members an opportunity to make any remarks they'd like to make.
You know, one of the things I intended to share with all of you yesterday was that I attended in March the Occupational Therapy Association conference, the national one. It was in Orlando, not always my favorite conference city, but as it turned out, Orlando was having better weather than California. We were having the humidity here and they were having the beautiful blue sky sunshine there. But more importantly, the level and caliber of presentations that took place, that the amount of enthusiasm of our new entry-level occupational therapists coming into the profession, as well as where we're going on our leadership and focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would just say that the future is bright for the consumer of occupational therapy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Cabrera, any comments? None? Marcos? Lina Doe, Dr. Pavlovich, do you have any comments this morning? All right, hearing none, I'll move on to item number 15, public comment for items not on the agenda. Now, this is an opportunity for people who are participating in this meeting in person and remotely to introduce themselves. It's not obligatory that you introduce yourself, but you're welcome to do that and to invite the board to consider alternative agenda items for future meetings. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna open the in-person comment first and then close that and open the remote comment period through WebEx. First, I'd like to open it to the floor here. Anyone like to introduce himself or bring an item to the agenda of the board? Seeing none, let's move to the WebEx participants and ask them if they would like to bring any issues to the board's attention for future agenda.
Good morning. We are open for public comment on future agenda items. We will give everyone 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. If you wish to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. And for our mobile device users, you have 3 different pages and only one of them has a hand button. So you may need to tap the ellipses button, that's the ... at the bottom, in order to find the place with your hand button. And it looks like we have a request from Ada Boone Hurl. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hurl, COTA, Program Director, Sacramento City College. No additional comments, but just a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ada. Do we have any other public comment?
Yes, we do. Hold on just a moment. We have a request from Penny Stack. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Capstone coordinator for Loma Linda University, and I just want to say I appreciate being here and thank you for making this available on WebEx.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Board President. Sorry.
Quite all right. Please, thank you, Penny, and for participating. Any other comments?
Those were our only requests for comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you, thank you, David. Thank you, moderator. At this time, we've reached number 16, updates from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Welcome. Would you like to, Melissa Gear, would you like to introduce yourself, or shall?
This is the moderator. Hang on just
Please,
a
thank
moment.
you.
We're grabbing Melissa Gear right now.
Thank you. Oh,
David, I am in person. Thank
Aha.
you.
Sorry for the confusion. I saw you
No
online as
problem.
well.
I keep doing that to you. I apologize. So hello and good morning, President Bookwalter, Vice President Morcos, Executive Officer Martin, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Gear, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Before I start my update, I would like to thank all of you for your service as we commemorate Public Service Recognition Week. May 5th through 11th is Public Service Recognition Week, and DCA joins in honoring more than 3,000 DCA board and bureau employees dedicated to protecting California consumers and thanking all employees and board members for their service and contributions to consumer protection. On April 30th, DCA hosted an in-person meeting with Secretary Tamika Moss and executive leaders. It served as an opportunity for DCA leaders to meet our new secretary and hear her vision and priorities for the business, consumer services, housing, and agency and the department. Next, DCA has learned of a recent increase in scams targeting licensees. Though the nature of the scams varies, they are similar in that they involve individuals falsely identifying themselves as board employees and telling the licensee they are under investigation. The scammers attempt to gather personal and/or financial information and may even demand payment. Boards are urged to be vigilant and proactive in providing licensees with tips on avoiding scams. On April 5th, 2024, DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, also referred to as DEI Steering Committee, held its quarterly meeting. The committee reviewed and discussed the member application process, establishing subcommittees, and solicited input from the committee on how to expand language access, workforce development, and advance DEI in 2024. The next committee meeting will be held on July 26th. If you have any ideas you'd like the committee to consider, please let your executive officer know. As a reminder, DCA's learning management system has many DEI-related training courses available. Board members are encouraged to participate in available trainings and continue to grow in our DEI efforts. Also, last month, DCA's Office of Public Affairs staff participated in 2 Facebook Live events hosted by the Consulate of Mexico's Sacramento and Fresno offices during its Financial Education Week. Staff presented Get to Know DCA in Spanish and shared a broad overview of consumer and licensing information. In addition, DCA joined an in-person resource event with the Consulate of Mexico in Sacramento. Another Get to Know DCA virtual event will be held with the Consulate of Mexico in San Bernardino on May 14th. The consulates have expressed interest in future event partnerships to share even more licensing and consumer resources. Additionally, in the coming months, DCA will be developing workforce development outreach opportunities for all boards and bureaus to participate in. I look forward to sharing more information soon. Now, as we look ahead, just a few reminders. As the fiscal year comes to an end, please submit your travel expense claims, or TECs, as soon as possible and no later than Wednesday, June 7th, 2024. Claims submitted after this date will still be processed. However, the state's controller's office will not issue payments until after July 5th. All travel expenses and advances submitted for travel on or after July 1st, 2024 will be processed for payment after the budget is signed. For questions regarding travel claims, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. Lastly, now that the annual Form 700 filing period has ended, DCA and BBR would like to thank all of our board members and executive officers for helping us to achieve nearly 100% compliance. So thank you all. And again, thank you for the opportunity for me to join you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board that you may have. And if further information or assistance is needed on any of the items that I've shared today, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and the rest of the Board and Bureau Relations team.
Thank you very much, Ms. Guerra. I appreciate your coming to us and providing this important update. And I want to give board members an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. Do we have any questions about the update? Dr. Pavlovich, do you have any questions?
None particular, but I do appreciate being in the know, so thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. At this time, may we open to the public for public comment? Thank you. Does anyone in the room have would like to make a public comment about the DCA report? Thank you. Moderator, may we open the public comment remotely, please?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment on the DCA report, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Thank you again, Ms. Gear. This brings us to item number 17, presentation by the DCA's Office of Human Resources on executive officer recruitment process and timeline and the announcement of interview dates. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Olivia Trejo, and I am the HR Chief with the Department of Consumer Affairs, Office of Human Resources. And this morning I have with me.
At the base of the microphone is a switch. Okay, try it.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay. My name is Catherine Bachelier. I am the Appointments and Recruitment Specialist for the Department of Human Resources.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, board members. My name is Catherine, and I am the Appointments and Recruitment Specialist for the Department of Consumer Affairs. During today's open session, I'll provide an overview of the Executive Officer Recruitment and Selection process, review the duty statement and recruitment announcement to obtain your feedback and suggestions.
I'm sorry, could you bring the mic a little bit, just move the mic over to closer. Yeah. You don't have to move.
Okay.
Yeah, in front of your mouth would be, yeah.
Okay. I have hard copies of the duty statement and recruitment announcement. If you would like a copy, please let me know.
I would.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Is this the same as the announcement in our packet?
Yes, I emailed it earlier.
Say no, no
this week.
changes. There's no changes. Okay.
Oh, there are some changes? Okay.
No, there are no changes. Okay. I just want to make sure that that this is the same as what we have in our
Yes,
packet.
it's the same that I emailed earlier this week.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're all right then.
There you go, Hector, if you want one.
Okay, so I will begin with the executive officer recruitment and selection process at this time. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions along the way. The executive officer recruitment and selection process will require 2 members who will have time and interest to participate in the selection process. We do plan to formally appoint a search committee in today's meeting. The members will be chosen by the board to be a part of the search committee to assist with the entire recruitment activities. In today's meeting, we will have an opportunity to review and finalize the duty statement and recruitment announcement, which will be used for the executive officer advertisement. The executive officer recruitment is typically advertised for 30 days and is advertised on CaliJar's platform, but may be advertised externally, such as through the Capital Morning Report. If you choose to advertise outside the CaliJar platform, please let me know so I can provide you with the link of the posting on CaliJar's website. During the advertisement period, I or a designee will work directly with the search committee to determine application screening, interview questions, and potential interview dates. I will serve as the contact person on the advertisement and will provide the search committee with applications received each Friday on a flow basis. The search committee will review and screen applications received based on the desirable qualifications to determine candidates for initial or final interviews. Depending on the number of applications received, if initial interviews are recommended based on a large candidate pool, they will be conducted with the search committee. Reference checks will be conducted for the top candidates prior to the final interviews with the board members. At a next scheduled board meeting in closed session, final interviews will be conducted for the top candidates. It is my understanding that interviews may be scheduled at the beginning of December. The selection of the executive officer will require a vote by board members to select a final candidate. Upon selecting the finalists for the executive officer position, a start date and salary can be determined. The selection of the candidate must be kept confidential until candidate notification has been completed and accepted, and the unsuccessful candidates have been notified. The selected candidate will also require criminal offender record information or CORI clearance, if not with the board, which will be facilitated by the Office of Human Resources. CORI is information obtained through fingerprint submission to DOJ in response to a request for criminal conviction review. Once the selected candidate has passed CORI, the board can work with public affairs to make the formal announcement. On the effective day of appointment, the oath of office must be administered, which may be administered by any board member, DCA director, or their designee. Direction on the administering the oath will be provided at a later time. This concludes the executive officer recruitment and selection process overview. Do you have any questions regarding the executive officer recruitment and selection process?
I have a question. So the selection committee reviews the duty statement and the documents that are, and then it's brought to the board for approval, or how does that work?
So that's what we're going to be doing today is
Okay.
going over the duty statement and the
Okay.
recruitment flyer as a group and then make any changes collaboratively.
Does it come back with us to check again, or is it?
No.
This is it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Yep. Okay. President Buckwalter, at this time, do you have 2 members you would like to recommend to serve as search committee members?
Well, we've been discussing having 3 members, but I understand that could you describe to us confidentiality issues and to have a 3-member committee when it comes to having to notice meetings?
So we only allow for a 2-member search committee to be in compliance with the Bagley-Keene Open Act meeting. So I can refer to legal counsel to provide the statutes in regards to that.
I did get, I did have a, well, can we say more about that? Could we please?
Helen, do you have the law on that part?
Certainly. So Bagley Keene is in the government code. Government Code Section 11121 provides that a committee appointed by a board of 3 members makes the committee subject to the Open Meeting Act. That would require 10 days notice prior to any meetings, the posting of an agenda, and the need to coordinate all the people, including the candidates, for that 10-day meeting. Then the Bagley Keene does allow a committee to meet in closed session in order to discuss the appointment. However, Government Codes 11125.2 and 11126.3 have special rules for closed session for the appointment of an executive officer. And so when closed session is complete, the committee must then come out and provide any reports, documentation, action taken, and roll call votes taken. So this would not only interfere with some of the confidentiality of the appointments, as well as the candidates' confidentiality and privacy rights. And also those that are in this committee, including the board members, would not necessarily be subject to any other confidentiality permissions. And so this is why DCA has never done this. We would have to make sure that all confidentiality was protected, because once something is shared, even from legal, that could also make it open. And so this allows for a nimble process so that the members of the committee and the candidates can work together, that the documentations are not necessarily released prematurely, and that candidates that are that apply are not necessarily exposed and then exposed that they were not selected.
So I would like to talk with the board about this. It seems we have had discussions in the past about having the president be part of the committee, having a public member and our vice president be part of the committee as a public member, how important that is. And we have a board member who was involved in the previous executive officer search a number of years ago for our current executive officer who has experience with this. If 2 people are more valuable on that in that group of 3, I would say that it's the vice president and our board member Whittlesbach, and that the president, I understand the president has not always been a part of these committees, and that if I withdraw, then we would have a committee of 2 who are experienced and can protect the confidentiality of the process and can work on this search and avoid some of the confidentiality and open meeting issues. How do board members feel about that?
So I have a question. The last time we did this, how many members were on the committee?
I was not part of the board at that time. This says the board there's never been a search committee of more than 2 in the past.
Correct. And as we mentioned at the last meeting, the accountancy board recently hired their new executive officer, and they have a board of 15, and they still only had 2. DCA has never used more than 2.
So I would propose appointing Christine Whittlesbach and Beata Morcos as the 2 members of the committee. Do we want to vote on this committee?
This is a committee appointment. There's no vote necessary.
Yes, I just wondered if the board members would like a vote as a courtesy, or do you feel comfortable with that? With a committee of 2?
My understanding is I think they do want us to make a motion, so probably for that purpose, I think a motion's good.
All right, we have a motion to appoint Christine Whittlesbach and Beata Morcos as 2 members of the search committee. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Hearing none. Do we have any public comment? Oh, is your hand up? I can't tell. Sharon? No? Okay, thanks. Public comment in the room? Hearing none. We have any WebEx public comment?
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the dot 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 at the bottom, in order to find the page with your hand button. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, let's call the vote.
Board Member Cabrera,
Yes.
Board Member Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Palovich,
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach,
Yes.
Secretary Dow, yes. Vice President Marcos,
Yes.
and President Bookwalter.
Yes,
Motion
motion carries.
carries.
Thank you. Now, back to our esteemed representatives from HR.
Thank you. I will make sure to email you both my contact information after the meeting. Next, I would like to review and go over the duty statement and recruitment announcement drafts that are part of the agenda.
I'm sorry, could you move the mic in front of you? We really can't hear. Yeah, thank you.
Better? Okay.
Much better, yeah.
When you start reading, you lose this on the mic. So when you're reading, it's in front of you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, I would like to review and go over the duty statement and recruitment announcement drafts that are part of the agenda. Both the duty statement.
A little more. I don't want to block your paper. I'm sorry. About that.
Thank you.
Sorry, we need it for the recording and the public participation.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to review and go over the duty statement and recruitment announcement drafts that are part of the agenda. Both the duty statement and recruitment announcement have been updated by the Office of Human Resources to bring standard in language current. First, I'd like to bring to your attention the duty statement. I hope you had the opportunity to review it and now ask if you have any updates you would like to make to the duty statement.
Any comments people have on the duty statement? This is our only chance, from what I now understand, to be the, to look at this, so.
And like Catherine mentioned, it is pretty standard language, but if there's anything that may have been outdated or no longer applicable, this would be the opportunity to make those changes as well.
I have a question about the functional requirements. I guess it's just a technicality. When it says daily access to use of a personal computer and telephone is essential, is that mean it's going to be provided by DCA, or they're like, they have to have, you know? So this is a technical issue. Is it the personal that they own, or the DCA provided personal computer and phone?
It would be state issued equipment.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, because people remote now and then not. So then I just want to clarify that
Yes.
maybe we want to specify that it's state issue as opposed to being personally owned by the future executive officer.
Sure, we can make that change if no one opposes that recommendation
Can
to
you-
add that it is a state issued equipment. Okay, thank you.
So may I ask just a question, one point of clarification about the committee? The role of that committee is to review the applications, right?
Correct. They will be reviewing the applications that come in. Catherine will be sending those on a weekly basis to the search committee. And then based on the desirable qualifications, they will compare that with the applicant's statement of qualifications.
And then out of that, they make recommendations to the board.
Correct.
And so when the board is then doing the candidate interviews, is that an open or closed?
The interviews will be in closed session in front of the entire board.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the statute worked there, I guess. It's a rhetorical comment.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps it would be a good time now to ask for public comment on the executive officer statement, just because we do have an open process.
President Bookwalter, I have a question.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
No, I'm just wondering, for those of us who haven't been around for selection, I've had Heather Martin my entire time during my service. I know you said this was a standard contract. Are you aware of any changes that we might not be aware of as our first time, for especially that have already been amended coming forth? Or is this like the traditional contract that goes back, I don't know how many years?
Is that question for, who's that question?
Oh, for DCA?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just wondering, I haven't been around. I've had Heather as my as our executive officer
So
for my
this is
10 years.
a board member asking you a question,
Yes.
just FYI. So.
Thank you.
Yes, so I was just wondering if you're aware of any amendments that have made to a template that we're seeing now, because I think you said it was a standard, pretty standard language. Were there any amendments to an older template, or is this kind of what we've had for years and it's still with us? I just kind of want to know if timeline of the last time it was updated, if at all.
Yes, it's my understanding it was last updated in 2010 when the previous executive officer or the current executive officer was appointed, and minimal changes were made to the duty statement just to bring this language standard to DCA wording.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Secretary Doe?
So my other question is, I know there's executive officers for all the different boards. Besides specific related things to just our occupational therapy board, is this similar to all the executive directors for all the boards and commissions in the state? Or is there any variations from board to board?
There's slight variations for the different boards within DCA. For example, some have different numbers of board members, so that's listed, and any particular act or whatnot that's relevant to that board would be listed on this duty statement. But for the most part, it's a very similar, like the other executive officer duty statements.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question as well. As part of the duty statement process, does the current executive officer, Heather Martin, did she weigh in on any part of this at all? Or is that part of the process to ask them if they have any comments?
She was given the opportunity to review it initially before it was sent to the board members.
Okay, great. So she didn't have, whatever comments she would have had would have been in here already, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Richard,
Christine Willesbach, yes.
is Heather on the meeting right now?
That's a good question. Heather Martin was planning to participate remotely in this meeting. Is she in
Yes,
the?
I'm here.
She's
You're,
here.
you're here?
Yes.
Okay, so could we ask her?
Yes, that's a good idea. Could we ask Heather Martin for information about any comments on this
Yes,
duty
definitely.
statement?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I actually sent an email to Catherine letting her know that I did not have time to review the materials. I do know it's been updated, excuse me, from the one that I was originally hired under. It's, it's in a new template and the wording's been slightly changed. But to the point that HR made earlier, if you guys have any suggestions, now is a good time to make those so that the documents are all finalized and can be submitted with, the package to HR once this process begins.
Thank you. I was wondering about the enforcement side of things and interaction with the Attorney General's office. And there is, I mean, this had a 2015 date on it. There has been the new the new legal section that deals with regulation. And I just wondered, it doesn't seem to be that specific in this job description to include the interactions with those internal departments. But I'm just thinking it seems to be covered. But I must confess that I'm not intimately familiar with the whole state organization, the organizational chart. So I just want to make sure that all the responsibility of the executive officer to interact with the different departments that may or may not be outside of DCA is covered by this. And maybe that's under the section E, the personal contacts.
Correct. And the date on the first page is more of the effective date of the template itself. On the last page, you have the date when it was revised for reference. But if you would like, you can delegate to the search committee to finalize the duty statement with any additional changes they may deem necessary,
Mhm.
and give them that authority so we can work, so HR can work with them on finalizing this and adding anything else that they think would be necessary to be included.
Does the committee develop interview questions?
So the Office of Human Resources does have interview questions available that will be shared with the search committee. They can create their own, or sometimes we do survey the board members to each include or submit a question to HR, so it'll be part of the process. So there's different variations, and we would work with the search committee on how they wanted to implement that.
Thank you. So some of these questions could be, some of this information could be captured in the interview questions that are developed after this meeting. Okay,
Correct. Mhm.
that would satisfy me.
Richard, if Heather hasn't had a chance to even look at this,
Yes.
I would hope that maybe you could delegate it to the committee so that Heather could at least have a chance to weigh in on this before we.
That's a good idea.
I think that's just so important that Heather at least has a chance to weigh in on it.
Okay.
Agree.
All right. Okay. That makes sense. Heather Martin?
Yes, and what I wanted to suggest was that if you all would like, I can provide any handwritten suggestions to the committee if that's what you guys would like.
All right. Do we have a motion to that effect?
If we need a motion, I will move. So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to delegate the review and revision of the duty statement to the search committee. And we have a second. You have any board comment on that?
I think it's very important that Heather looks at this, and especially, I wanted to ask Heather, like, if there was anything that wasn't listed when she was hired that she thinks should be in there, because, in the position, things change, but when you get a job description, you're like, okay, this is good, I can handle it, but then when you're in the day-to-day of it and the nitty-gritty of it, there's something that you wish you knew before you took on this task of applying for this position. So I would love to make sure that she has that and then gives us opinions of like what she wished she knew before she, took on this position.
Thank you. Any other board comment on the motion? Hearing none, I'd like to open it to public comment in the room. Does no one would care to comment on this motion? David, may we open the floor to public participants via WebEx?
Yes, indeed. We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the dot, dot, dot at the bottom in order to find your hand button. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Let's call the vote.
Board Member Cabrera. Board Member Miller.
Yes.
Board Member Palovich.
Yes.
Board Member Witzelsbach.
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos.
Yes.
And President Bookwalter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, we'll be in contact if you want to provide us your any changes you would like to make. Send them to Catherine, and then Catherine can provide those to the search committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will review the recruitment announcement. Please refer to the desirable qualifications section, and I ask you at this time if you have any changes or additions or deletions on this section.
Maybe I can start with asking, Heather Martin, have you had a chance to review this document?
Yes, I have. And the version you have in the materials is I modified it slightly from the one that was provided by HR. And I did provide some suggestions to that.
So this reflects, this document that we have before us reflects your suggestions for changes.
Yes. Just a starting point. We had very little
Mhm.
time between the time we got the material and had to, send it out to you all, that late package.
Does the committee feel it necessary, or the board feel that it should be delegated for further review by the committee, or are they satisfied with this document?
I I would just ask Heather, do you feel like you would want to look at this anymore and make more suggestions? Are you satisfied with your input?
Again, it was very last minute and it was right before we were mailing out the materials. So insofar as once we're not trying to quickly get information mailed out to you, because we wanted you to have the hard copies in advance of receiving the email. So it was sent along with some other materials, and I will be happy to do the same for that announcement and provide the committee any suggestions with a handwritten note so that they can see what the changes are, and they may agree and they may not, but I can provide my input. Yes. Thank you.
Richard, it sounds like she feels like she needs to look at it again.
Yeah, it seems like we need a motion to charge the committee with reviewing this document as well. Does that make
So
sense?
moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Denise Miller, a second from Linda Doe. Any further board comment on this? Sharon, none?
I have a question, I guess, another technical question. With the special requirements, I mean, just in case this happens, is there any rules about former and current board members applying for this position?
Not that I'm aware of. I'll defer to legal for that.
I'm sorry, is there any prohibition against?
Yes, like former board members of the Board of Occupational Therapy or current board members, not that anyone has announced that they want to do it, but I'm just saying, is there any prohibition of that? Just in case someone decides to say, oh, when I was a board member, I think I could have done it better type thing, not that.
To my knowledge, there is no limitations as long as you meet the qualifications. If it was, say, a current board member, there might need to be some
Conflict of
adjustments.
interest, yes,
But it would be, this is one of the reasons why it's a state position is generally open to the public. So yeah, anyone who qualifies can apply.
Okay, just one that clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other board comments on the motion? Hearing none, are there any public comments in the room? Seeing none, may we open for public comment via WebEx, please?
We have a new motion on the floor. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the dot, dot, dot at the bottom in order to find your hand. We're going to wait just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
I do. Let's call the vote.
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
Yes.
Board Member Palovich?
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach?
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos?
Yes.
And President Bookwalter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Great. The other topic to discuss is the release of the announcement once it's been finalized. Working backwards, we're thinking of releasing it on September 1st and having it advertised for 30 days. So that way we can do preliminary interviews if necessary in late October, November, but I can leave that up to you if there's a different preference on when it can be released. Or we can delegate that to the search committee to work with HR on determining the proper date to release it.
Do we have an opinion on the release
I
date?
think it should be after the search committee has the chance to review these documents, get the response back from the current executive officer, and they can decide what date would be released. But knowing that we have 30 days, it needs to be advertised for 30 days before interviews and reviews can be happen. And we're planning to interview in December anyway, so that gives us a great leeway. So I would refer it to the committee.
Do we have a motion to ask the committee to
So moved.
I'll second.
select? Yes, we have a motion to delegate to the committee the start date. And a second. Do we have any other board discussion about that? Hearing none, do we have any comment from Heather Martin, I should ask, or Sharon Pavlovich? No? Let's open to public comment in the room. Do we have any comments about that? I see shaking heads. Let's move to WebEx. Any public comment?
We are open for public comment on our third motion for item 17. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to wait a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Let's call the vote.
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
Yes.
Board Member Pavlovich?
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach?
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos?
Yes.
And President Bookwalter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to provide you with an overview of the executive officer recruitment and selection process, review the duty statement and recruitment announcement with you today. I look forward to working with you and the search committee on filling your executive officer position. Please do not hesitate to contact me should you have any questions. Thank you again.
Thank you both very much for presenting to us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Do you have a card that we could get? A card or
Do we-
contact information?
She will be emailing you, so you have her information shortly after this meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone object if we had a 10-minute break at this time?
Nope.
No?
All right, let's do a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at it's 10:08, so let's make it 10:20. Thank you. This is Richard Bookwalter with the California Board of Occupational Therapy. We're back from our break, and we'd like to start next with agenda item 18. Is everybody's in place? Good. So to give some context, we have, the board receives questions about areas of potential practice or questions about can occupational therapists do X, do Y, do Z? And we've received a few of those over the years. We have delegated a few to a practice committee to do to provide information to the board about, what the state of practice is. Sometimes we also have legal representation to identify areas of law that are where such a practice may come into conflict. We've been discussing and having on our putting on the back burner, but on a future agenda, the issue of dry needling. And we've had a couple discussions. It's been in the minutes. We heard there have been AOT, on the national level, AOTA has made mention of it in a few documents, and the National Board for Certification of OT, which is the licensing exam that all occupational therapists take in the United States and is required by this board to certify people, gave a report yesterday in which they also mentioned looking at it in their practice analysis. So it is on the national topic list. And this board did receive a letter some time ago from a person asking, can occupational therapists do dry needling? So in the context of that, the board did delegated, talked about the issue, didn't quite know what to do about it, wanted more information, sent it to the practice committee. I don't believe the practice committee has had an opportunity to look at the issue. In the meantime, the other side of things, the legal side of things, Helen Joffrey, our legal counsel, has been kind enough to look into the records and find some documents that maybe have help in looking at this issue. And I'll pass it to her in a minute, but they're in your packet. There are some, the issue was dealt with by the Physical Therapy Board of California in 2018. Many of the things that come to occupational therapy have already been, came to physical therapy first, and this is one of them. And there was there are minutes here in which Jason Kaiser, the executive officer, on item 18 states that the dry needling is not within the scope of practice of the PT Board of California. And those practicing dry needling within the board's jurisdiction may face enforcement by the board. So we know that was established in 2018 and as on the PT board,
Well,
and there was
wait.
an acupuncturist there as well. Yeah, may I?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Maybe I should just.
No, this is fine.
Well, because when you say it was established, the board didn't actually vote on it, though.
That's true.
So I just want to make that clear, because when you look at the record, the board didn't vote. The executive officer just proclaimed it. So that's important to understand.
Yeah, I thought having these source documents is important because there is no vote that I see unless in a minute we'll ask if there's more information, because there may be more. This may not be the full complement.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
But and then the second, so there's these two sets of minutes basically are in here because of that. And then the third document is documents from the acupuncture laws relevant to the discussion on dry needling, which do define the use of needles in a certain way by acupuncturists as being their scope of practice, and I believe legal penalties and for certain groups except for exempted groups. So at this time, I would like to ask our legal counsel, Helen Joffrey, to discuss this with the board. If you'd be so kind.
Thank you. So at the last board meeting, we discussed that legal would provide some legal guidance on how to provide a good foundation for determinations of scope of practice in general. And so this is, of course, the legal recommendation, and the board can do with it what it wishes and can also add in policy determinations. But essentially, what is a solid legal process would be to start with a publicly accessible formalized document. And so as we've discussed at previous meetings, the associations do have a scope of practice document. It's not codified as anything that we could reference. However, the associations are codified as something that we deal with, or bodies that we deal with. So it is a persuasive document that we could then use. There's also government documents, anything that's kind of formalized as a starting point, if it's not directly obviously in the law, as a starting point to determine whether or not there is something formalizing that a particular activity, whatever it is within the scope of practice for occupational therapy. Then California has a very diverse population of various licenses that the legislature has codified as requiring a particular license rather than a more generic license or no license at all. And so then the board would move to the statutes to review what exactly the legislature has said, if anything, regarding a particular act or task. And then if either the law is not clear or there may be some overlap, then legal would recommend that either the board itself meet with potentially overlapping jurisdictions to discuss, or the executive officers discuss, or some combination of the both. The board can do other things, receive testimony or hold task force or whatever it wishes to kind of create a determination of scope of practice that would come before the practice committee. But these are kind of the legal steps that help to provide a solid foundation for general determinations of scope of practice. So I am going to share my screen. because what I did was take those steps, and it appears that this is also what physical therapy did. Is my screen shared? Thank you. And so taking those steps, we went through the process of dry needling, because it has come up at our meetings that this is potentially within the scope of practice for another jurisdiction within California. So as we stated, or as I stated, we start with a formalized document. So here, the American Occupational Therapy Association, which is codified in our law as a recognized association, does have a policy in which dry needling is asserted to be within the scope of practice of an occupational therapist. This is not law, but it is a starting point, since dry needling is not mentioned within the statutes of California. So, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can. Let me try and minimize it then, so I can actually see the top.
And Helen, doesn't this policy also say states jurisdictions may vary and permissions may vary? It's another point in this document. I think we reviewed this before.
Yes, so it's a guide, and again, it's not law, and it may say that jurisdictions may vary. They do not provide the end all be all. I do apologize. I'm trying to get rid of my floating meeting controls here so that I can tap on. Come on. There we go. So then, because dry needling is not defined in law, what we did, what you would do to figure out exactly what dry needling is a legal interpretation can be used by using a dictionary definition or a generalized comprehension definition. So here I Googled dry needling definition, and I found the Cleveland Clinic, which I will go to next, and also a citation from the National Institutes of Health. So going to the Cleveland Clinic, dry needling is a treatment used for pain and movement issues associated with myofascial trigger points. With this technique, a provider inserts thin needles into or near your trigger points. The National Library of Medicine of the National Center for Biotechnology Information, which is a .gov website. .gov websites or .gov information does tend to be more influential than associations or generic articles, but it's still not law, and it's persuasive, but not law. So this is a study, and again, I didn't dive deep. I was looking for definitions, but this article is Dry Needling, a Literature Review with Implications for Clinical Practice Guidelines. And I'm looking for a definition, and it says wet needles use hollow bore needles to deliver agents. In contrast, dry needles requires the insertion of thin needles, I do not know how to pronounce that, used in the practice of acupuncture without the use of an injectate. So here, this would also be a formalized document that the Scope of Practice Committee could use to say that a .gov website called out the practice of acupuncture as a potential jurisdictional issue. So, but here we have, regardless of this statement, again, this is not law, we do have that we have needles without the transfer of a agent into the muscle, and it is used in the vicinity of these muscles and nerves for pain management and movement. I believe some of that's more in the details here. So we now know the definition of dry needling, and we also know that there's a potential jurisdiction that is at issue. So I went to the Scope of Practice definition for acupuncture. Business and Professions Code 4927 provides that acupuncture means the stimulation of point or points near the surface of the body by the insertion of needles to prevent or modify the perception of pain or to normalize physiological functions, including pain control or treatment of certain diseases or dysfunctions of the body. So this definition, and we are now within law. The legislature has defined the practice of acupuncture, and this closely mirrors the definitions of dry needling. The Acupuncture Board in protecting its jurisdiction, just as we do, provides that it is a misdemeanor punishable by a fine not less than $100 and not more than $250,000 or $2,500, sorry, or by the imprisonment of county jail not exceeding 1 year, or both, if you do not have a current or valid license to practice acupuncture and you otherwise do so. And essentially in B, it says that notwithstanding any other law, someone who does not have a physician and surgeon or dentist, podiatrist license or an acupuncture license, and who is not under the supervision of someone with those licensors who practice acupuncture by the application of a needle into the human body, is performing acupuncture without a license. So in this case, not only is it a practice without a license, unless you are one of these provided licenses, but it's also a crime. This is also mirrored in the generic, so that was specific to the Acupuncture Practice Act. Healing arts in general have general provisions that apply to all healing arts. Under the article of unprofessional conduct, we have 130.5, which mirrors the same language but references the Practice Act, that says only a physician, surgeon, osteopathic physician, dentist or podiatrist, or someone under that supervision may apply a needle to the body of a human being. So this is also not stating for what purpose, whereas dry needling is a little more specific as to the purpose, but the application of a needle into the body. So this would be the analysis of step 1 and step 2 that was provided for generic search. And so at this point, we do have a specific law that addresses what is the definition of dry needling and can be directly applied. The Physical Therapy Board, as the president mentioned, did take the additional step to coordinate with the Acupuncture Board, and the executive officers appear, I obviously was not there, to have discussed ahead of time, because the executive officer for the Physical Therapy Board starts the discussion by stating that this is not within the scope of practice. And then the acupuncture executive officer then proceeds to discuss how these actions of inserting a needle into a human being would be outside the scope of practice for a physical therapist, and therefore it is not within the scope of practice under current law. So without a change in the law, the law does not provide for a person who is not one of these or an acupuncturist to perform the insertion of a needle into another person.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive review of the laws that affect this area. Do board members have comments they'd like to make or any discussion? Board Member Wittelsbach? Can we get your mic, please?
So these are just initial thoughts, and frankly, I could go either way on this. But when I look at the information that you're providing, I read it in a slightly different way. When the screen where you're talking about the different types of needles, the wet needles, the dry needles, if you, I don't know if you want to go back there, if you just want me to describe what I remember. It talked about, so 2 different types of needles. So there's a wet needle that's hollow on the inside that can deliver fluids. Oh, here we go. Okay. Somewhere. And then the dry needles, it's something about, it doesn't have that. And it said, like the type that's used in acupuncture. I don't think that necessarily means that they use the same types of needles, but I don't think it was necessarily implying that it's the same thing, that dry needling and acupuncture are the same thing. They're just talking about they're using the same type of needle. So that's my first comment. I don't think they're trying to draw a correlation between the type of treatment they're providing. They're just saying the needles that they use are the same.
Correct. And that's why I said it calls out the practice of acupuncture.
Mhm.
So it indicates that there is another jurisdiction, particularly within California, maybe not all states have an acupuncture license type, and that may be a more generic type, but we do have a board of acupuncture. So here we have a document that names acupuncture, but this is not law, and this is not anything codified as authoritative that we shall follow. But much like the policy of the association, it is persuasive, it is informational for a scope of practice committee. And so it is not holding, but it's simply persuasive. So this may not define the practice of acupuncture here, which is why we must then go to the law.
Right. So I'm not done.
But yeah, but basically it's not making that parallel is what I'm saying. It's not making that definition. It's simply calling this out.
Okay. So then a little bit later, they talked about how, I forget where exactly, but so that dry needling was the stimulation of, not stimulation, I forget exactly the wording, but something about trigger points, releasing trigger points. I forget.
That's on your screen now.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Where the provider inserts the needles into or near the trigger point to stimulate the muscles, which causes them to contract or twitch. So it's all about releasing the trigger points, which is why they do dry needling. My understanding now, I don't know that much about acupuncture, granted, and I know that maybe my understanding of acupuncture might be different from the legal definition, and that's a whole different thing. So you're the expert on that. But my understanding of acupuncture is that they're putting needles in along what they call meridians to stimulate energy release. So different to me than releasing trigger points. So I guess just what I'm saying is I think you can make an argument either way. I don't necessarily look at, first of all, let me just preface this by saying I'm not trying to make an argument that OT should do dry needling. That's not what I'm saying here at all. I'm just saying I don't necessarily buy into the fact that dry needling is the same as acupuncture. I think that you can make an argument either way.
Well, and what I have is the law.
Before can I ask a further comment from,
If I could just point out, I do have the scope of practice up now for the screen, so that you can see exactly what acupuncture is defined as. And it does say to modify pain or normalize physiological functions. So it doesn't mention the energy release, not that they couldn't also do that. But that is the scope of practice up for you, for your assistance.
Right, but I think the theory under that is energy release to do that. And there's different ways to get to that.
Well, but all I have is the statute, and that would be where discussions with the acupuncture board may be appropriate, as the physical therapy board did.
Right. To me, it's persuasive. Oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
I was wondering if we could include Sharon Pavlovich, who is remote in this conversation because her hand's been up.
Sure.
Or Christine, were you done? Do you have more?
Go ahead.
No, please. I'll
I
go
always
after.
have more, but
No, please. I'll follow you. Please finish.
I even forget what I was getting ready to say. So please go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just didn't want to neglect you, Sharon.
No, thank you,
The
Richard.
remote participant.
So another frame. So I am an avid consumer of acupuncture, and for many years, and I actually do. I do have a position. I actually do think this falls under the licensure board of acupuncture, and the reason I say this is myofascial release is the big word that acupuncture is kind of. I'm sorry, that OT it's kind of the thing that OTs do, PTs do, right? Trigger points, those kinds of things. And when I think about those myofascial releases and contraindications and precautions and things that, if you get certified in myofascial release, you have to think about things like what are the contraindications and precautions if someone has a bone fracture, a burn, a DVT, blood thinners, metabolic conditions, all that could be problematic, right? That's just myofascial release. Add to that needling, right? Like I'm not familiar, and I don't work in this area, so I'm not familiar if we have anything on a profession that goes over precautions, contraindications of things that you have to look like just when we're doing myofascial release. And if we're equating dry needling to trigger points, which myofascial release is, then dry needling, I'm assuming probably has the same precautions and contraindications that we have to look in. So I have bigger, and also think about billing. I think there are 2 CPT codes unique to dry needling, but it started, if I remember correctly, I think billing started, there was codes that were for acupuncture with that, and it might have evolved since that, but that would be an area I would explore as well to see where does the reimbursement come from? Because if it comes from acupuncture and dry needling, the funds are coming from that. That's just a whole nother discussion. So trying to see the bigger picture, I think we need a lot more information on what that might look like. And I kind of, and Helen, one, thank you for providing all of this, the definitions and the law kind of helped me a little bit kind of highlight where my stance was with this. But again, I'm open, but I do think we need more information. And as I sit right now, if you're taking a pulse, I do think that it falls under the Licensure Board of Acupuncture is just what I want to share.
Thank you. I believe do we have a public?
I
Board
do
Member
have,
Miller?
yeah, I do have a comment. So I, like Board Member Wietzelsbach, am not building a case for occupational therapists to do dry needling. Where it becomes confusing is there's an entire method by a physical therapist devoted to myofascial release. It's called the John Barnes method. And I actually long ago was trained in it. And because my work was in ergonomics and I was working with patients who had chronic pain. The reason I share that is if and so I would like further exploration is where I'm going with this, but if my memory serves me correctly on this, it's just suspect, but I think it's pretty accurate. When you went to these courses with John Barnes, myofascial, he is, and he's a physical therapist. I'm surprised the Physical Therapy Board didn't acknowledge that, but whatever the case may be, or maybe they did, but whatever the case may be, I believe that there's an advanced version of taking his course where you do the dry needling. If I remember correctly, you can go and do the hands-on, which is what I did. You can take a cranial version, an additional day. Now, again, this is many years ago, so things would have changed. I did not do the portion that involved the myofascial release of needles, but I struggle with, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of occupational and physical therapists are trained. So how do we get around that if indeed that is the case? And so is this something that our practice committee could look at? We've certainly gotten good evidence on the legal piece, but is there something to be discussed further or not? Are you familiar with the Barnes method?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
Thank you. This board did refer the matter to the practice committee. I think there's the practice side of things, and then
Oh.
there's the legal side of things. So that is helpful information. The whole thing about myofascial release. I'm just mindful of the public comment potential here. Is it okay for board members to bring some public comment into this? We
Please.
have anyone in the room who would like to talk about this? No? So on WebEx, we may. So please open moderator to WebEx.
Absolutely. We are open for public comment on agenda item 18, dry needling. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 in order to raise a hand. And for our mobile device users, you will need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... at the bottom if you are having trouble finding your hand button. I'm going to give everyone 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. And our first request comes from Ada Boone Hurl. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. I listened to this with curiosity as a consumer of both methods. But I made an observation, should it be the interest of the board to pursue inclusion of dry needling in a future scope of practice statement? On the definition that was last presented, it it referred to acupuncture as, I'm paraphrasing here, I couldn't copy the whole thing, as the application of needles, quote, near or on the surface of the body. And so that stood out to me as that is this as a distinct difference than something which would be using a needle for a deeper myofascial release. So perhaps that should, again, in the interest of the board choosing to make some kind of statement about this, might be language that helps delineate the difference between acupuncture and dry needling. Not an expert, just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ada, any other comments?
Next, we're going to hear from Kristen Neville, followed by Bryant Edwards. Hold on just a moment, Kristen. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Neville. I'm a state affairs manager with AOTA, and I've been following the licensing boards around the country and their response to dry needling. Some have incorporated it into their statute in their Practice Act. Others have been able to skip that step and go on the regulatory path. But my comment is much more general, simply that since our position, the policy E18 was mentioned earlier, AOTA has looked into this in the last couple of years, and to the extent that the board wants to pursue this, I'm glad to provide any additional information that I can from AOTA. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not sure some of the information I have is available only to our members, so I'd have to check to see what of that can be made public, but I'll just put myself out there as I'm glad to be a resource and answer any questions about what other boards have done.
President Bookwalter, may I ask
Thank
the
you,
public,
Kristen. Yes.
may I ask the public a question about that?
Yes, please.
So, hi, Kristen, Denise Miller, board member. Would the information you provide us when you said updates, is there a position? Has there been a position change? Is there something more definitive? What specifically would we be requesting?
Well, what I have, I can share is you've got policy E18. We also did, the representative assembly met 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was fairly recent, and adopted an update to our official document on physical agent modalities that is, my understanding is, it incorporates dry needling. Again, that document as finalized is not ready to be released to the public yet. In my understanding, hopefully later this summer, it will be posted on our website and published in AJOT. I'm not entirely sure of the timeline. So that is coming. And then the other information I have is basically a chart of all the different state actions, state licensing board actions that have been taken. Which states have it in their Practice Act, which states have it in regulation. There's one state that I think says it can be billed by Medicaid. Unfortunately, in order for it to be billed to Medicaid, it has to be within the scope of practice. So it just gives you an idea of the actions that all the different licensing boards have taken on it. That's what I can provide at this time. The other, what I'd have to check on is prior to the adoption of that document, policy E18, which that resulted from a task group that was set up by our representative assembly. I'd have to check to see if the report that task group sent to the representative assembly, which included some research on dry needling, and I'd have to see if that is something that I can share with you all beyond, because it's currently available only to members. So that's just an idea of the information that I have, and like I said, some I'd have to look and see what can be shared. I hope that helps.
Can I ask Kristen a follow-up question? Well, we have her.
Yes, please.
Kristen, are you aware? I know there's so many different states that you have to navigate for AOTA, but as we saw the definition, it's a misdemeanor, right? According to acupuncture language. Are you able to comment if AOTA was able to understand that there might be other states, California being one, that already identifies, very clearly the use of needles, blah, 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 is a misdemeanor? Is there some kind of disclaimer on, or something that will be said, like, look at your state, requirements or blah, 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 because, you know what I mean? I know it's hard to navigate 50 states, but was that taken into consideration for the context? Because we have something very clear by the acupuncture board that says it's a misdemeanor.
So all state licensing boards around the country, it's either a misdemeanor or a felony to provide a service that you're not licensed to provide. I'm not aware, I haven't looked at the acupuncture boards around the country to find out if any besides California's have specifically said dry needling is within our scope and our scope only. So that's not a question that I have enough information to answer at this time. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask a follow-up question? Kristen, I know you're involved with all states in the advocacy area for AOTA and state relations, and that sometimes the AOTA is as an advocacy group for the profession of occupational therapy will partner with the states to change legislation or to recommend legislation, and maybe sometimes even financially support efforts to change legislation around certain issues. Has dry needling been an issue in certain states that AOTA has helped try to push, to help try to become law? I hope you understand that question.
I believe I do. To my knowledge, we haven't hired any lobbyists to help a state get dry needling incorporated into their practice act. We have done that once or twice for states that want to get the compact adopted. In terms of states that are advocating for dry needling, in Georgia, there's been legislation introduced, I believe, to update the Practice Act to include dry needling. I know the Georgia Licensing Board has been following that as well. We did not hire a lobbyist there. The Georgia State Association has a lobbyist they had retained for a number of years, and he's been working on that effort. In the state of Maryland, they did not change their statute, but they proposed regulations that are going to be close to being finalized, as I understand it. And once again, we did not hire a lobbyist specifically for that effort. They've had a lobbyist that the state association in Maryland has had in place for a number of years, and she advocated on that issue, and I believe they may have had some involvement with the drafting of the regulations. That's as much as I know. Though someone else in our office handles the legislative side of things, and we're having a meeting on Monday. I can ask if they're aware of any other states that we've worked with this year on the issue.
Yeah, it sounds like the state associations have taken the lead in these states where legislation or regulation has been necessary in order to codify.
That is the case I would venture in most states. I know that Tennessee, they updated their Practice Act. They went to the legislature and changed the law to include dry needling, and the state association was involved in support of that effort. And since we adopted policy E18, AOTA has been able to, assist where needed in that effort, since our position on dry needling is that it's included in the scope of practice. So in Again, I can't speak to the legislative side of things because that's another staff person's area of expertise. But in my, from what I've seen, it's mostly the state association that has been taking the lead on it.
Thank you. I think Member Whitlisbach has a question.
Yeah. Like Kristen said, it's already, I guess this is a question for our legal counsel. Like Kristen said, it's already a misdemeanor or a felony to provide a service that you're not licensed to do. So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Let me tell you my whole question before you even respond. Why the extra step of saying, it's a misdemeanor to put a needle in somebody when it's already, a misdemeanor or felony to provide something else? So if they're claiming that's their scope of practice only, why make the extra step of putting that into language? So that's part of my question. There are so many other things that OTs do, PTs do, speech therapists do, chiropractors do, physicians do, nurses do, that overlap so many treatments. And to my knowledge, none of us has ever said it's a misdemeanor if you try to do this. So I'm just wondering from a theoretical point of view, like why this? Why it just seems very strong-handed. And again, I'm not making a case that OT should be able to do this in California. I'm just sort of wondering why this one thing has been kind of carved out as this big sticking point.
So I don't have the legislative history on why this was. I just have that the legislature did find that the insertion of a needle, or it says application of a needle, is required to have a particular license. And that is why it's not just in the Acupuncture Practice Act, but is in the generic unprofessional conduct for all of healing arts to not apply a needle to the body of a human being. So that would also not include, say, veterinarians. They're not inserting needles into human beings, but a veterinarian could not do that. It is for whatever the legislative history, that the legislature determined that the insertion or the application of a needle required specific calling out and a specific protection of the public to make sure that anyone who applied a needle was properly educated and experienced. So I do not have the history, just that it was so important to the legislature to not only include in the Acupuncture Act, but to include it within the unprofessional conduct of all healing arts provisions.
Gotcha.
I would take a little. I think you're kind of excerpting some of the language. It does say any method involving the application of a needle to the human body or directs, manages, or supervises another person. The exact language of BPC 4935 says, notwithstanding any other law, any person other than a physician or surgeon, dentist, or podiatrist who is not licensed under this article, but is licensed under Division 2, commencing with Section 500, who practices acupuncture involving the application of a needle to the human body, so that practices acupuncture involving the application of the human body, performs any acupuncture technique or method involving the application of a needle to the human body, an acupuncture technique or method involving the application of a needle to the human body, not just any. It doesn't, one could argue that you could divide that, you could say it's an acupuncture technique, and if dry needling is not an acupuncture technique, it doesn't fit there. And the third thing is, or directs, manages, or supervises another person in performing acupuncture. So acupuncture is attached to all of these. So when you say, you could also read it as you are reading, I believe you are looking at this as saying, you're kind of ignoring the acupuncture technique or and just focusing on or method involving the application of a needle to the human body. If you take them as a acupuncture, if you take them as this, the first part of that phrase, in addition, then you could, there could be an argument made. Now, I just wanted to throw that out, but I don't know what the difference would be, and it's certainly arguable as because of the way the law is worded.
Moderator, if you could share my screen again, please. Or allow me to share my screen. Thank you. So what you are looking at is within
No,
this.
we're not looking at it yet.
Oh, sorry. No, well, what I'm saying, what you are looking at in your book there is statute from the specific
From
Acupuncture Act.
DNP, yeah.
Yes. So what I have on my screen now is for the B&P code for all of healing arts. So this overrides everybody. And these are the general provisions, and it's unprofessional conduct to apply. You are involved. You have to have one of these licenses in order to apply a needle to the body of a human being. So that was the provision that I'm referencing that makes it more generic, more broad than simply acupuncture. It is telling you that if you're doing these things and you're not licensed, you are performing unprofessional conduct. But this one is for all healing arts and not simply within the Acupuncture Act.
I understand what you're saying. Performance of acupuncture, it says,
Yes. And so you need to have one of these licenses.
to
in
perform
order to do that,
acupuncture, right?
and to
right.
perform the application of a needle
No,
to the
it
body.
says acupuncture says to perform the performance of acupuncture involving the application of needle to the body or human being, not the performance of something else applying the needle. You would have to have authorization to do
Yes.
that.
And so
however.
then you would go to the scope of practice, which, as we discussed, is the insertion of needles to prevent or modify pain or physiological functions, and so pain and movement. So correct. So a nurse, for example, could use a needle because that's not acupuncture. That's going into the vein.
And
et
if
cetera.
people doing dry needling are able to make a case for dry needling not being acupuncture, that would also, it's so close as to be, changing of the statute is what you would recommend in order to
Correct. So
authorize that.
I think that's where we're going with this is you can continue to have the discussion.
Right.
But for, and that, if, for example, if either we or the acupuncture board were to discipline someone for unlicensed practice and cited these codes, the licensee could argue and present those arguments. Based upon the statute as it stands, would be a difficult argument. However, if
Well, if the legislature in its
yeah,
wisdom were
sorry.
persuaded,
If occupational therapy would like to be added to the ability to do myofascial release with the use of needles, they would need to be added to these
it would be,
acts,
yeah,
yes.
it would be.
And that was also in the PT minutes where the acupuncture EO had said, if you would like to perform this, you will have to get a statutory change.
Yeah. May we get back to, we kind of got sidetracked from public comment here in a discussion with the board, and I want to get back to that. Moderator, do we have more public comment?
Possibly. Bryant Edwards, you had your hand up previously. If you still wish to make a comment, please raise your hand now. Anyone else is also welcome to raise their hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our dial-in users, dial *3, and for our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, please click the ... that's your ellipses button at the bottom to find your appropriate page. Looking around, I see no requests for public comment or no additional requests.
May I ask a question of Brian Edwards, if he's here?
Bryant, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Bryant, I'm going to send you a second request to unmute your microphone.
Perhaps he stepped away.
I have no response.
All right. May I ask if any of the other members of the public participating in this meeting are involved in the Occupational Therapy Association of California? Brian Edwards has been the president, and Sammy is the incoming president, and there may be some government affairs people from OTAC here, because OTAC, Occupational Therapy Association of California, is the state advocacy association, and we've heard from AOTA that state associations have undertaken efforts in other states to change legislation. I'm just wanted to see if there's anybody here who could speak to that as if that's a priority or an effort by the California Association.
This is the moderator. I don't know what response you're getting in the room, but online we have crickets.
All right. Well, there is no report on that, so that's fine. I'm just throwing it out in the void to see if, not a void, there are people there. Okay, so more comments?
Yep.
Christine Wittlisbach?
Yeah. So I guess I would say at this point, it does seem like, based on the language, that it would require legislative change. It really does seem like that. And I would hope that this can be taken away from the practice committee based on that, because it really does seem like this would require legislative change to make a strong case for OTs doing it, if we wanted to pursue that.
What do the
Well,
public?
One of the things, and I agree with that, because halfway through, after listening to Kristen Neville speak from AOTA, I would like to have a follow-up to see if she can bring back those documents from the RA where they specifically spoke about it, or if they're doing any practice changes. Because, you know, where it is a dilemma, and if it requires some language change or is, again, if an occupational therapist practicing myofascial release, and many occupational therapists have their own private practices completely built on this, and if they come before us or there's a disciplinary case, and yet they have advanced training that allows them to do this, then if they have the advanced training, then, and it's a consumer safety issue, do you see? So I would like to be in line with what the legislation's saying, but I also want to be clear that the message is that there's advanced practice courses that are training OTs and PTs to do this, and we have to be mindful of that. So we need our practice association, national and state, to take this up so that, you know, the language can match up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from our public members about the consumer protection side of this issue.
Oh, I was going to say that as we're listening and discussing, I think it's not in the scope right now. But as a public member and someone who doesn't practice this or understand it, knowing that acupuncture is doing this, and I've read, as you know, I like doing research, and so I found papers written how there are people, associations defending that occupational therapists should be performing acupunctural stuff. But so if we want this done, we do need to make language changes in the legislatures and policy. And as a policy, I mean, a regulatory agency where we protect the consumers and the public, we need to make sure that if there is people out there practicing as OTs, that we need to make sure that they are in line, and that if there is, you know, the association needs to, you know, work on bringing us evidence and bringing us forth, you know, language that they would like to see to make the changes, but it's not going to come from, it can't come from us. We need the association to rally the membership and get the evidence in front of us and help us, you know, convince that the legislation needs to be changed so that there is protection of both the practitioners and the consumers. So if there is a bunch of OTs out there practicing dry needling, we need the numbers and we need to understand it. So that's what I wanted to see, that the public members out there, you know, in the associations representing our membership, please come forward and bring us the numbers and present us with the facts and figures so that, you know, there is, you know, compelling evidence to actually go through the whole legislative process of changing the policy written. But I've seen, I mean, doing the research, I've seen that there are states that allow it for OTs, and associations that allow OTs to do it and, have compelling arguments against it. So I know it's out there, so they need to bring it to us.
Can I ask her a question about what she said? So just to clarify, you said that you read that there was
Yeah, I found a paper. Yeah.
about OTs doing acupuncture stuff. Did they actually say acupuncture stuff? Because I would say that dry needling is
stuff,
not necessarily acupuncture.
Yeah, here's a paper written by the Alberta College of Occupational Therapy, and it says it supports the use of acupuncture by qualified occupational therapists and believes that acupuncture and related therapies may be useful. So
That's Canada.
That's Canada, I
Yeah,
know.
they do allow dry needling, by the way, for OTs and for PTs for sure. I believe OT, but I'm not positive about that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying.
That's Canada, yeah.
No, it is Canada, but there's.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay.
And Richard, just really quickly before you go to public, if it's okay, if I may.
We have a lot of people who want to talk. So yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
I'll do it under a minute. I just want to echo Denise's, Christine, Lena's concerns. I think my only concern is if that AOTA document does go out and it looks like it's permission, I just kind of foresee possible enforcement things coming our way because it's not in legislation and there is a risk if there is a misdemeanor and there's so much gray right now. So I echo more information to be able to get to us.
Thank you. Did I thought I asked for Beata's comment sooner, then we can get back to you, legal. Is that all right? Helen, is that all right?
So I just would like to say that I'm agreeing with what Denise and Lena is saying. And we do have this gray area. And as a consumer, I haven't done any dry needling or anything with the OT practice, but I do go to acupuncture all the time. So I do believe that if you're trained to do something, then you should be able to do it and you should be protected by it because obviously we have a lot of practitioners that are in charge that were trained to do it. So what I'm understanding, are they doing illegal work now because they are doing dry needling?
So that was the comment I was going to make. So we have, because California has the statutes it has, it's very similar to someone coming from out of state practicing OT without a California license. We don't permit that. That doesn't make them any less qualified or any less knowledgeable, but they are not allowed to practice in California without a license. And so when other states have permitted OTs to practice dry needling, that doesn't mean that all of that has gone to waste. It simply means that in California at this time, they must be dual licensed. So they would be licensed in occupational therapy and also acupuncture and go through that process unless we have that added as one of our provisions, or you're also a podiatrist. So you would be dual licensed. So basically at this point, just because an occupational therapist is doing it isn't what automatically makes it a misdemeanor, but that they're doing it without the proper license, which in this case for California at this time would be an acupuncture license. So they would need to take that additional step and do so. So, but as an attorney, I can somewhat practice in another state with permission if I'm handling a California case in that state. But anything beyond that, even though I have all the knowledge and all the experience that another attorney would have in that particular state, I have to be licensed in that state. We also have states, for example, chiropractors, which can assist with birth in other states that may not be able to do that here. And we have multiple times where, and this is why looking at the California law is very important, because California does create these individualized and specific jurisdictions that may not mirror other states.
Thank you.
Yeah, just with that, well, and the way I'm looking at this, that the needling is different, what Christine was saying. So could that be specified that it's, dry needling or, all the, again, I'm not familiar with.
I think if acupuncture would like to make this a little more specific, they could pursue, due to their authority, they could probably pursue regulation that would specify dry needling is. Otherwise, either or all the boards could coordinate with their associations, but this type of scope of practice legislation would have to come from the associations and not the board. But it's not impossible. It's just at this time, with the interpretations of law and the application of law we have now, and as Dr. Pavlovich pointed out, the gravity that it's not simply a confusion, but potentially a crime, that that clarity is important, and if not, to err on the side of caution. And nothing stops someone theoretically from obtaining the dual licensure, which is not unusual nor unprecedented.
May I just take a minute to, Hector, we haven't been able to hear from you. I want to make sure your voice is included in this discussion, because we've all been kind of dominating the discussion, and I want to give you an opportunity to voice. As a public member, you have an important point of view on protecting the consumer and this whole issue as you understand it. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us? Come back? Okay. Did Linda have one more thing to say? I wanted to give you a chance before Linda
Yeah,
talks.
yeah. I talk a lot. So let me go back to what it was said about supervision. What if a OT was under the supervision of an acupuncturist or a doctor or a physician or something like that? Could they still could they provide it under the way it's written?
I think that would be a little more specific and would have to directly review the facts, and either by the acupuncture board who was reviewing it for unlicensed practice, or sadly there was an error. And so either this board or relative boards would have to, because it would also be not only us, but whomever was supervising would then need to be under for misconduct and error. So I think that requires a little more specificity. So what I have is the law, and then it would have to be applied to those facts. Theoretically, the law provides for a acupuncturist or podiatrist to oversee someone performing these acts. As to how closely they have to supervise, maybe more specific, as opposed to standing right there, or I supervise this hospital. Those would all be individual facts that would have to be analyzed.
President Bookwalter. Hi. So if I may just go back, the very definitive points that have been made legally are about the acupuncture, their scope, what's written in statute for them, correct? Am I under? Okay. So it is very clear to all of us practicing as occupational therapists that we cannot do acupuncture. However, it is not clear in the language that dry needling just belongs to acupuncture. And there are hundreds and thousands of therapists trained who have advanced training perhaps to maybe do this. So moving away from really focusing on the acupuncture scope, that's intact. What legal's presented, that's intact. Absolutely correct. We can't go there. What could be problematic for this, for a licensee who comes before us and then this board to have to deliberate on consumer safety, what could be problematic is the other piece that was identified, the overarching statement about healing arts. So again, to move this along, we know that it doesn't belong in the practice committee, so that's progress today in this lengthy discussion. And perhaps we could lean on our associations like we've all agreed and get them to come back, bring this for a future agenda item. And if there's language change that has to be done, certainly we want to line up with that. We appreciate what legal's done. We want to line up with that. But again, the words using illegal, I think that a case could be built opposite. I think if someone came before us with their attorney, they'd be able to do it. based on what's happening by those who are trained. So I think for our purposes, so we don't have to be conflicted, should there be a disciplinary case, it could seem worthwhile to pursue working or looking at what that overall statement is and making sure that lines up with exactly what we do. So everything's clear. And that's the end of my comments on this topic for sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to give the public another opportunity to weigh in. Does anyone in the room have any comments on this issue? How about on WebEx, moderator?
We have another call for public comment on this issue. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And for our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... and cycle through one of 3 pages. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. So it seems, please.
I just have one more question for legal. Is dry needling listed anywhere in our policies and procedures, anywhere in the state?
I could not find a codified reference to dry needling at all, which is why legal interpretation, when there is not a codified definition, it defaults to a generic or commonly understood definition. So, and then that was why we went through and we Googled the definition of dry needling, and then those words very closely matched to the scope. So if dry needling was defined as dancing in a circle, then that would not match. So, but yeah, basically I could not find in codified law a reference to dry needling. So it is likely that a definition needs to be developed, like I said, either by acupuncture in the form of a regulation and/or statute, or by a change in the statute to specifically reference dry needling. For example, the scope of practice for acupuncture, it says it includes things like cupping and other things that I don't know anything about. And so dry needling could be added to that list.
So with that means that anybody performing dry needling could be potentially disciplined because it's not
Correct,
listed.
unless they have a license that defines, and in this case, that would be acupuncture or podiatrist. I don't know exactly what the scope of practice of podiatrist is, but they are exempted under the healing arts as able to provide a myofascial release with a needle. So anyone doing these acts that is not appropriately licensed then could be subject to disciplinary action.
Well,
Did the
acupuncture,
language of the
One at a
acupuncturist,
time, please.
oh, just one last question. Did the language of the acupuncture say that only they could do dry needling?
The word dry needling does not occur in statute at all.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
that's where we use the definitions.
so it wouldn't necessarily have to be the acupuncture board who would submit for a definition of dry needling, as you referenced.
Theoretically, it looks like the acupuncture board has the most authority and most specific authority for defining what the use of needles for myofascial release would be the appropriate board. And so they could do a regulation as opposed to attempting to add themselves into a statute. I do not know if podiatry would have such an option, or similar to the article that was read, if podiatry has a right to practice acupuncture, at which point it's still the acupuncture board only.
Okay, so I'd like to wrap this discussion up. We've had a robust discussion and everybody's had a chance to talk, except Hector. I want to give you one last chance.
Podiatrists cannot insert needles.
Podiatrists are exempt, and it's not just insertion of needles, but for the purposes of acupuncture, which would be myofascial release, right? Podiatrists are specifically exempted, as are doctors and surgeons.
So they can do it. The answer is they can do it.
Correct. So yeah, they can.
Yeah, because they have an exemption, but which we do not, which occupational therapy practitioners do not have.
Yes. And I didn't dig too deep into that because I wanted to keep it as relevant as possible to just occupational therapy.
All right.
If I could just sum up. So we've talked about a few things, removing the dry needling as a topic from the practice committee, since there's legal issues that would preempt any practice issues. And it's in a way a waste of time unless the law has changed, because when people ask, consumers or practitioners ask about dry needling, we can direct staff to advise them that occupational therapy practitioners do not have clear statutory authority, and that there would be a change, and that clear statutory authority would be required for occupational therapy practitioners to practice dry needling in California. And then be ready ourselves as a board the board could initiate legislation, but asking for this authority from the legislature, but it doesn't sound like we have that kind of information, or, I don't get a sense from the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we want to do that. The associations in other states have done it so that we could just simply ready ourselves for a state effort, any state efforts in the future to change the law to get the law more specifically authorizing occupational therapy practitioners to do dry needling. Does that sum it up? Those three things would be so. I will instruct and ask the staff to provide that information when requested, and we'll take it off the agenda, which I think makes everybody nervous at DCA, because it's a potential conflict of between boards of scope of practice, and it's a potential expansion of a practice act without legislation. So,
Yay, we accomplished
sense?
something today.
any closing words, Helen?
What we can do to kind of make any kind of response tight, if you would so wish, is staff can create kind of like a template response, or maybe even post this something on the website if we wish to go that far. But other than that, I think it'll just be as it is. It is what it is until it changes.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's an executive officer's sort of decision to make about how that's disseminated, unless the board cares to be involved. So yeah, that's good advice. Any further public comment on this issue? One last time, one last chance. Oh, yes.
Any massage therapist in the state of California who inserts any needles during any kind of massage therapy or procedure is,
It sounds like they would be potentially subject to practicing acupuncture without a license and could be disciplined for that, or under the massage is also.
They're not licensed.
Unless they have an acupuncture license, that
Are
they
they're
could
the
subject
counties,
themselves.
aren't they some of the counties regulate massage therapists and cities. So they're not licensed by the state, right?
Right.
So are you having a massage therapist stick you with a needle? Because
No,
I would
no,
question them
no,
about that.
no.
That happens.
No, I've,
Richard.
no, I have heard.
Yeah.
I have heard
Okay.
in Los Angeles.
Maybe they have an acupuncture license that we don't know about, but that's.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
they
say a massage therapist or even an attorney who also has an acupuncture. I don't think people would want an attorney to start using needles on you, but if I also had an acupuncture license, I could do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the misfortune once to have to go to a proctologist, and he had acupuncture things all over his walls because that was a side gig that he had. Anyway. TMI, too much information.
May I just, going back to the action steps, what I understand is that it's being removed from our agenda. The national office, should they choose to, or should the state of California Association choose to take it up, they can bring AOTA, that would be with them, okay? And then thirdly, we'll see what happens if someone's disciplined who has an advanced training in this. Okay.
Is-
So And then we'll defer to the executive officer on any communication back about this. Okay.
That sounds good. And we have,
That's good.
we had a discussion earlier about the use of minutes to convey information. It seems like this is another case of minutes being used to convey a position of the board, even, which is that, it's not part of the Practice Act.
I think if the discipline were going to happen, though, Denise, it would happen at the acupuncture board, not here.
I think it would depend if, like I said, there was an OT that made an error with the use of needles, then that would be something we would be looking
I
at as
see.
opposed to the acupuncture board. But we could also report it to the acupuncture board for additional discipline, or obviously the other way around, they could say they use their discipline for unlicensed practice, and then obviously someone, or theoretically someone was hurt, and then they could also do it here. So it would be a dual discipline across boards, but it could originate in either.
And I did ask you, Helen, yesterday informally whether we had cases where any of this had taken place. We didn't know of any, I think.
I do not know, and
So
I didn't do
we'll
that
see.
research.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some other whole other research project.
Yes. Which I would prefer not to have.
Yeah, I know. It's like that. All right. Thank you very much. We're coming to agenda item number 19. Do we need another quick break? Yeah, 10-minute break. It's 11:38. Can we come back at 11:45? Is that too soon? 11:45? Thank you. We're going to return from break with agenda item 19 for the California Board of OT meeting for May 3rd, 2024. Item 19 is Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee update and recommended positions on the following. I believe we have some guests in the audience, or in the public section anyway, who have a particular interest in a particular bill, if I'm not mistaken, AB 796. And to recognize their patience in sitting through the previous part of our discussion, I think we'll start with that bill and then move on to the others, if we may. The Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee has met and gone over bills. That bill is not changed since 2023, and we don't have new language, but we've been informed that new language is on its way and possibly in mid-May after some further discussion. So I'd like to just ask if you would be so kind as to come up, and you may join us at the table and introduce yourselves. And we're going to be talking about AB 796. There's no material in our packet because the language, well, maybe the old bill is here. The bill in the packet is from last year. Do we have it even? Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a bill dated February 13th, 2023. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Nick Harvey. I'm a representative of the California Athletic Trainers Association. With me is David Gonzalez, our representation as our lobbyist. We are the title sponsors for AB 796, a bill to regulate athletic trainers introduced by Dr. Weber last year in the Assembly. As a little bit of oversight, and thank you for the summary, the California Athletic Trainers Association is a membership-based organization representing athletic trainers in California. California remains the only state that does not regulate the medical profession of athletic training, and we want to rectify that and introduce a regulatory bill. The bill in the copy that you guys have is the bill that came out of the Assembly with overwhelming support that we were able to move through. It was not the same as the version that we introduced, the amendments that naturally happened throughout the process, but we wanted to make ourselves available to update you on any information, some of the talking points that we've used in the past, The first and foremost being a public protection issue of not regulating the profession of athletic training, which continues to pop up. And one most recently, a person posing as an athletic trainer at a high school in Los Angeles who was convicted for sexual assault and rape of 12 young girls in the LA area. Ongoing investigation that was going on for the past few years. And we believe that regulation of athletic training is one of the big steps to help rectify this and protect the public and bring athletic training up to the standard that every other medical profession in California has.
Yeah, thank you, board members. David Gonzalez, I am the contract advocate for CADA in Sacramento. I really appreciate the time to talk with you today. The current bill that's before the legislature does not impact the OT board, but the reason we wanted to raise this issue with you is because the original bill did have this oversight done under the OT board. And we as CADA continue to feel that that's actually a good fit still for consumer oversight and for consumer protections for this unregulated activity. And so we want to continue those conversations with the board, continue to be a resources for you. We are going to be before the Senate B&P committee in a couple months or a month or two. So we want to have that dialogue with you and see if that might change as we go through the legislative process. But we're here as a resource, hope to work with you and hope to answer any questions you might have.
So the bill that we have in our packet, which is the old bill, has the athletic trainers as a sub-board under the medical board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And previous bill, which we have reviewed here a couple of times and taken actually different positions on different versions of the bill, had the athletic trainers under this OT board as a separate board that had its own separate executive officer, its own separate panel of board members, yet was under the OT board.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
That is
And
correct.
and you want to go back to that model. Is that the plan?
Yes, so the plan would be going back to a sense of a subcommittee underneath this OT board.
What do you need us for? If you have a separate EO and a separate board, what do you need to be under our board for? Why can't you have your own board?
I think that some of the guidance that we've gotten from legislators is the establishment of a new board may need some guidance from an already established and in place board that is serving the public and their membership. And we've gotten communication from legislators that that would be a good fit for our profession trying to establish itself.
Are you aware that our executive officer is retiring at the end of this year and that we will have a brand new executive officer starting January 1st, if we're lucky, and that person starts on time?
We're hoping to get that fixed soon. That's why we're trying to pass the legislation now. No, I'm just kind of facetiously saying that, but no, we still feel that the OT board will be a good place to go under. So I actually had some history with the medical board and establishing the polysomnographic certification program. And we did put that polysom certification under the medical board. And the rationale behind that was because you do have some resources and some infrastructure in place right now. The truth of it is in California, establishing licensure is very difficult. And it's usually this baby step process, and they want you to be under a current existing board and to develop that framework to see if there's a need to further license the area. Frankly, most other states are a lot more aggressive. We're the only state that doesn't license athletic trainers. Most other states have a full licensing board for ATs. We're trying to start somewhere to correct this really unfortunate thing that we have in California, where we're now the only remaining jurisdiction that doesn't do this. Even the District of Columbia has a licensure program for athletic trainers. So we are the last. As the LA Times just reported, those consumer protections weren't there for those students, and we're trying to rectify that. We think that can happen under the medical board, but quite frankly, we think we're a better fit under the OT board. But we just want those consumer protections.
We have board, I'm gonna go ahead, board members.
I have two-part question. So you said you want to start underneath this. So ideally as a board, you want to be a subcommittee of us, but then you have your own separate EO and board committee, et cetera. So ideally is your plan to be under us for a while and then eventually establish your own board once you have your baby steps? And the second part of the question is, of all the states that you mentioned, because we're the only one that doesn't have it, where is this board located for those different states?
So, Ms. Doe, if it's okay, I'd like to start with the first part of the question, then maybe Nick can tell you about what's going on with some of the other jurisdictions. So, our overall goal is consumer protection. Frankly, the goal isn't to establish our own board. If that comes to be the case where it's necessary to have that broader regulation, then we're of course open to that. But the overall goal is to establish some type of framework in California to where we can sort of start the process of registration and licensure or regulation of athletic trainers. And so your board seemed to be the better fit given what you do and where you came from. I think you had the same sort of evolutionary framework when you developed your board. And so we think that's the better fit. Now, as to the other states, I'm going to go ahead and have Nick answer that one. if that's okay.
Every state is a little bit unique, but most, if not all, are represented under their own licensure board, or some of the states will actually group together physical therapy, occupational therapy, athletic training, all in one lumped board. I believe Oregon comes to mind when that happens. So everyone's a little bit unique based off of the system that they have within their state.
So then follow up on that, that you said that some of them are lumped with physical therapists. Why not go under the physical therapy board?
With the most recent history and throughout our past of trying to pass regulation, physical therapists have been one of the biggest vocalized opposition to our efforts in regulating athletic training and promoting public protection.
Thank you.
What are their, couple of questions for you. What are the biggest reasons a physical therapist give you in their opposition? Just curious.
Yeah.
And then President Bookwalter, I really have two other scheduled questions, but
Go ahead.
that was in, yeah.
The most recent things that the physical therapist came up with is talking about the lack of necessity, so not needing to regulate the profession, which we feel is a moot point because every other state in the union does regulate the profession as a medical profession. They have talked about some of the specifics in the past of a ill-defined scope of practice based off of education standards. And when they present a lot of that information, their information is quite dated. But it becomes a recirculating argument about scope of practice. And the one of their issues that they came up with more recently was the language or the concept of supervision. Athletic training is mandated through our education and our national standards to work in conjunction and have supervision of a physician. And they felt that the versions that we came up with were insufficient in some of those definitions. And our response always to that is that we have support of all of the supervision or all of the physician groups that we've been associated with when we've moved forward with regulatory bills in the past, as we do with this one.
So if I may, nice to see you. I've been on this board for a very long time. I'm actually at the end of being on this board, and this has been a topic that's come before us quite a few times. So in the interest of being old friends and in the interest of my time being limited, I'm just going to share a couple things because the business before this board is we've had so many things come up in the past couple of years that in looking at the agenda, I hope you hear this feedback as it's meant, and I'll just start here so you know you're on friendly ground. I'm one of the few occupational therapists that thinks that this is a very good move. And I believe so because I believe you should be regulated. I do believe that when all the other states are regulated, that California is at risk, as demonstrated by different things. I do think because you travel into other states, there's risk. I do know that you would share our office. There's a whole fiscal and financial piece that would offset things for our licensees, correct? So in examining it in every situation, knowing the two scopes are very different, it's not about occupational therapy being athletic training. It's an ability for you to be licensed, the consumer being safe, us being a license board that can do that. I see it as a business situation, but I have an MBA in addition to being an OT, so I think that way. But what I would also indicate to you, and this is where I would just encourage you in terms of taking up the board's time, again, is your language changes every time you introduce it differently. And again, we're old friends, so I can be frank like this, right? Okay. So your language changes every single time you reintroduce the bill. And every time you come before us, we have to dive deep into it, which we're going to do because it's a very critical issue. But you have so much previous information from this board on where we stand on language that if you were to come back, I may be gone. So you, by the time this comes back, but for my fellow colleagues who are still here, please look at the previous language that we so deliberated on for agenda after agenda and bring it back to them in that format and start from there, please, is my request to you.
So Ms. Miller, if I may, that's really good counsel and we appreciate that. And actually, if you look at the first version of the bill, that's what we intended. And so it was actually on a
I
previous
didn't like
version.
that first version.
And then, as you know, we go through the legislative process and then other people have their feedback. And so the current version of the bill has amendments that we didn't come up with. There's a significant amount of language that's in there that we didn't develop. And so that's just the legislative process, the negotiations you do. So we apologize that it keeps coming to you in sort of what it feels like a Frankenstein type of form. It's just sort of,
No, it's a process. I get that. All I would just ask in my last comment back to you is that really, please just be clear on what what your scope is. We're not trying to tell you what you can or can't do. We recognize there's a place in this healing arts world for athletic training that is very different than the scope of what we do. But please take our feedback on where the language could get a little muddy. And let's just let athletic trainers be athletic trainers and occupational therapists be occupational therapists.
if I may, we super appreciate those words. And frankly, we look up to the OT board because we're trying to grow to be where you guys are established now. So we definitely would appreciate your counsel. Some of the pitfalls that you had in developing this board, any counsel you have is well placed in us. And I think in the original version of the bill, we were under the OT board. We committed to this board that we would not impose any type of additional burdens, either financially or on a staff level. And we're committed to that as well, and working with you. So thank you for the dialogue.
I echo what Denise was saying. However, in all of your versions of the bill, this board was not protected. It was not clear that, the whole financial situation that you're gonna, in even our responsibility for our EO to be responsible. So none of that is clear. So whatever you guys do, we were supporting it and we asked for these amendments. And instead of providing the amendments, you kind of pulled out of OT. Well, not you personally. I know it was different representatives, and then you tried to go on your own and then under the medical board. So just, yeah, as Denise said, like make sure that whatever you're doing, that this board is not going to be responsible for any mistakes that might happen with your committee. And if that's clear, I think, I would be all for it. So the consumer in the end of the day is protected. So make sure about the financial situation, like how everything would work as far as the office space, the executive officer. Also, we're not sure. We initially asked if one of us could be on the committee, like as a board member. So again, that's something that was important to us. That was never fixed.
Through the chair, if that's okay. We were actually in the process of developing language that from our last commitment about those protections, but then we were moved to the medical board. And so what we will do right now, given this conversation, we'll develop draft language just in case we get our wish that we're put under a different board, and we'll put those protections in there because we're still committed to that. And that's why I raised that in our comments, that those initial commitments were solid. We'll commit to that and we'll put that language in the bill.
If President Buckwalter, let me know if I have a chance. I'm sorry, what was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Please go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Thank you for coming again. Like Denise Miller, I've been on this board for a long time. We're ending both very soon. I've seen all iterations of this bill. I'm a continual supporter of you having to be licensed. Anybody that says that it is unnecessary, it's absolutely ludicrous to think that given the climate of what's happening with athletic trainers, the lawsuits, look at the Olympic Committee, look at the case you just cited, is absolutely just ludicrous. And I'm just going to say that. You need to have governance. There has to be a regulatory board. This has to happen. I do remember language. You did have language previously, and you might want to consult that if you're new. Like I said, I've been here for all the iterations, everything that you had. There was a beautiful segment that the shared resources supported by Executive Officer Heather had said there is no cost. There wasn't going to be any cost because of DCA, and there was a plan in place. Actually, we were going to benefit. I actually see this as an opportunity for the occupational therapy profession to win-win, right? If we weren't so scared, and this is the reason why, Lina, I don't know if you've been here for iterations, then I'm just going to call it what it is. OTs and PTs in both professions are afraid that athletic trainers are going to take our jobs. And that's not going to happen. If you read their scope of practice, if you read everything, if you looked at all the classes, every single document they have, it's very clear what they're doing, right? First, and it's okay. This is an open forum communication, especially if they want to be under our board. But I do recollect there was going to be an OT board person on your board if you were underneath us. There was going to be shared resources, and there was going to be no fiscal adversions to you being on the board. There were going to be shared resources from DCA, and part of your funds, if I remember, were actually going to benefit the OT board. So I know that was in there. I remember that very clearly because that was a selling point for me. So I want to support you in the climate. I hope that as practitioners in the state of California, our PT colleagues, our OT colleagues, if we can stop living in a place of fear and looking how this could be shared, there's pieces of the pie for all of us. You need to be regulated. I want my children, my grandchildren to be regulated by people who know what they're doing, not someone who says their athletic trainer took a 2-week course and is out there in the field of anyone that's dear to me. That is not okay. So I support you. I hope that this gets passed. I'm sad because I don't think I will be on the board anymore because our time is coming to an end. And I hope that the board future for everyone who's looking at this is not based in fear. It's looking at opportunity and a potential outstanding networking partnership that this can become. And so is with that I hope that future communications really, really are mindful of that.
I also might just encourage you to, if you really are serious about the profession of occupational therapy, to get involved with our Occupational Therapy Association of California. It's really them you have to convince. Likely 2 new board members would come from that association. I mean, unfortunately, had you gone forward when you had the board, you know, we have 2 of us who are for it who may not be here to vote. So good luck.
Do we have other board members who can to weigh in on this?
I just want to echo that my questions are from the policy standpoints and legislative standpoints, because I'm totally, supportive of you guys being regulated, because I think every professional profession should be regulated, especially, athletic trainers, because you guys have a lot of trainers, not only in, the local level, but you have the professional sport. So from a policy standpoint, from an advocacy standpoint, as someone who has experience in lobbying, I would recommend you going out and finding athletic trainers that not only in, the local level, but the professional level, and them have their support, them speak up, have their bosses, their organizations that have the money to advocate for that. So, for me, I think beyond the legislation of figuring out where you want to be, and if you want to be under us, that's an occupation, and I get that, there is that fear and that people think people are going to take their jobs away. And we need to remove that fear, but we also need to bring in those big, powerful supporters to push behind your legislation, because you not only do you need the legislators, you need the people, the people in the profession. So you need OT support, you need athletic trainer support, you need the big money people who hire athletic trainers and express, the importance, how that this is an important, profession within the organization, and that without athletic trainers, our athletes would not get, to the caliber that they need to perform this entertainment, right? That many people love. And we hear it all the time about, like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, who deal with their athletic trainer all year long, not just during the season. So like that, you need to bring in that kind of support behind this bill to push it faster and further. So that's my side from the advocacy legislative side that I come from.
And Richard, President Bookwalter, if you are so inclined to invite the conversation from Heather Martin, who might be able to elucidate, I think she has a very distinct memory of what we've been through with the board and may be able to answer some questions if you're so inclined.
Sure. I mean, did anybody else want to talk right now, or do you want to hear from Heather Martin? Heather Martin, did you have a comment that you'd like to make?
Sorry, it takes me a minute here.
No, of course.
I understand some of the concerns that were expressed by the board regarding that. I'm hopeful that the suggestion about looking at past changes, will be taken to heart. And for example, I appreciate you all, being mindful of my successor and what they might have to do administratively. But in terms of, for example, BVNPT, Board of Vocational Nurses and Psychiatric Technicians, are under one board, and they have two different distinct scopes, different funds, et cetera. And the the Naturopathic Committee used to be under the Osteopathic Medical Board, again, a committee under a board, to get licensure. And we're talking a very small group of people, right? I mean, I believe there's over 2,500 athletic trainers estimated. Naturopaths are in the low fives. Again, I have no skin in the game, but in terms of operationally, I think the fact that them as a new license type and getting up to speed and those quote unquote baby steps towards full licensure as under their own board, that administratively sharing costs is not a bad thing for this board. It would not be additional work. I mean, a little bit for the contracts, but to receive reimbursement for the rental space and or copier use, et cetera. Even sometimes we do MOUs within DCA amongst other boards, even for scopes of work, so for example, if we had the capacity to, for example, assist them with the regs, that, we could do so and they would be able to reimburse. So there's a number of ways that the different boards have addressed this kind of co-mingling of operations. And so I want to point to that and, recognize again, it wouldn't be my issue, but I did want to share that part because I know you all have expressed concern. You don't want to, resource-wise, whether it's financial or time-wise, of the board staff, board EO, et cetera, that you didn't want that compromise. And I believe you've said that, and I believe that the athletic trainers understand that, and they're taking steps to make sure that that doesn't happen. Not to speak for you guys, you personally, guys, but so that's my take on this. Excuse me. Is that? Do you have any other questions or?
Do we have other comments?
I just want to thank you for coming again and let you know that I do hope that you will become regulated and that you become incorporated and that you seriously listen to what has been expressed by my colleagues here in order to expedite this process. Okay.
I would just like to reiterate my thoughts on I don't agree with the PTs that there's a lack of need, and I do feel like there is a need for some kind of regulation. I liked it when you had a trademark bill planned, because we started with that as OTs before we became licensed, and it was that was a good start. It didn't involve a lot of scope of practice issues that may arise. I did have concerns about the breadth of the scope of practice, especially in light of our own limits that we have. And I can't, perhaps, it's my own concerns being around when the Occupational Therapy Practice Act was being considered, and the pressures from others to other professions. And I do feel like the breadth I had concerns about the breadth. I didn't have any concerns about you guys being licensed, about the athletic trainers being licensed. I thought that was a good idea, or trademarked. I have some serious concerns about the logistics given the transition that this board is undertaking. I mean, having your own board would make a lot of sense. Having a brand new executive officer, staff, and having to train that officer, get another big change by having another group coming in and doing that. I think this is like possibly the worst possible time to bring on to have the structure that you guys are now proposing, and you're going to go in your meeting and mid-May, and you're going to talk to the author is talking to the sponsor, I guess, there's some meeting that you're going to have and where you're going to try to craft this. And if we say, go ahead with putting it under the OT board, then a bill will emerge from that. And then we'll have to review it and look at the scope of practice issues, which are not here with us today to look at. So personally, I support the regulation. Have just have really big concerns about the timing of this and under the OT board right now. I have big reservations.
Thank you for voicing those reservations. The language that is current and does have a sitting under the medical board, but it also reads a little bit more like registration, where the defining a scope of practice is not necessarily well defined, because the bill reads as more of a registration and coincides with our national organization that helps certify and register athletic trainers nationwide. Also, so the implementation date would be 2028 in moving forward. So hopefully, and that date can be moved, but that was our what was advised to us to ensure that we can give that time to establish and assist you guys and do what is proper to ensure that it is done correctly and without a burden upon this board.
And maybe I can add to that. So I know that we're getting in the way of between you and lunch, so I'm going to keep this super brief. But we really appreciate the conversation and all the work that's already been done on this and the future work. And we want to have that dialogue with you continuously. So whether it's here or in the future, please consider us as partners. One thing that I've seen in these scope of practice issues, I've got the benefit of representing other healthcare clients as well, medical groups. And in the field, when I'm out there in the field, these scope of practice issues are less important. It's really about the patient and how do we get the right people to the right person. And it's really team-based care is the emphasis. And so it's kind of a little frustrating with these scope issues that I see in Sacramento, where they sort of get in the way of consumer protections because they're sort of defending the practice more than what the patients need or what the enrollees need, what the individuals need. Some of these kids who are on the fields that are getting AT training from folks that are unlicensed and who knows what they are. And so we know that your heart's in the same place as ours in terms of consumer protections. Would really like to work with you as this develops and hopefully find some solutions. We'll share language and be completely transparent with your board. Heather's been a fantastic resource in what's happened in the past, and please consider us a partner in some way or another as this moves forward. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
And President Bookwalter, 30 seconds. I just want to say, this is an opportunity. I know things are hard. They will never get easier. There's always some obstacle that we have to deal with. And if COVID taught us anything, it's when all the businesses closed, there were new ones that emerged that are still thriving. I think this is an opportunity that OT has if they look at it from the right frame.
Thank you for your consideration. We look forward to seeing if a bill emerges from your meeting. We will certainly review it and look forward to giving you further feedback based on the details. The devil's in the details.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. We should have public comment. Thanks for reminding me. I've been good, but I just forgot this one time. Is there any public comment here in the room? If not, David, can we open for WebEx public comment, please?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment once again. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. For our dial-in users, please dial *3. And our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... in order to find your hand. And our first request comes from GK. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
All right, I assume you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, so I'm totally want to endorse the option of having the athletic trainers being licensed, which is really good, and that needs to be done in California. But them coming into DCA or even the Occupational Therapy Board, I foresee it as being a conflict of interest, because I'm not sure if occupational therapists do know, because they just said that they wouldn't like to include dry needling. But as athletic trainers, they are able to do dry needling. They call it intramuscular manual therapy, and that does include dry needling and the same trigger point philosophy that they use, which they say differs from acupuncture. In my case, it is not. For me, it's the same, because I use acupuncture on my own body, so I know what it exactly does and doesn't. But here the case is it's going to be a conflict of interest, probably dealing with athletic trainers under the OT, because tomorrow it could be seen as dual license issues, where they are, in one case, they are handling athletic trainers who are doing dry needling, whereas on the other side, they are denying that own therapy that the OT cannot do. So that could be one. And I also would like the athletic trainer forum who were just presenting this presentation out, why they're not considering Athletic Commission of California, because that's a perfect sports body, which includes martial arts and boxing. And I'm sure they would be very welcoming the athletic trainers to be under their fold and show them the way out to get into the process of getting their own license status later on. Just my thought. But I really welcome the athletic trainers should be licensed, but unfortunately, I don't think the other boards except Athletic Commission would be a best favorable option for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment from the WebEx?
That was our only request.
All right. I'll give an opportunity for Mr. Gonzalez to respond.
Oh, just real quickly on the question of the athletic training committee. So frankly, we're open to being under any board or regulatory authority. We're just trying to get this done because it's been 20 plus years. So we're open to ideas. That particular commission is a little bit more narrow in focus, and I don't know if they have the same resources, but we're open to ideas.
So that's on the table, is to also be under the Athletic Commission of California, or in your discussion that you're having this month with the.
So frankly, in these discussions, everything's on the table. I mean, the medical board wasn't something that we were considering when we brought the bill forward, and now we're under the medical board. And so again, I think we revert back to the basic premise that we need to get some type of regulatory or authority over athletic trainers. Where that is, we're open to. We think you're the best fit for us, but that's our opinion. There's other opinions.
What's the second best fit?
You guys again.
And the third best fit.
I have a
Curious.
question. May I ask how many potential licensees do you have in athletic training in the state of California?
That sounds like a Nick Harvey question.
Yeah. Sorry that I forgot to ask that earlier.
No, absolutely. Great question. As a member-based organization, the CATA has roughly about 2,800 members, but we know as certified athletic trainers, as regulated by our board of certification, which takes national numbers, is over 3,000. So hovers between 3,000 and 3,200 over the past couple of years in California.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think are we concluded with this agenda item? All right. It's pretty much lunchtime. We should probably break for lunch and come back and to discuss deal with the rest of the agenda. What's the time? 12:30, 12:26. 1:30. Shall we do 1:30? And come back at lunch? Break for lunch and come back at 1:30? Well, it's only 1 hour. Does that give us time? Yes. All right. We didn't order anything this time. Oh, so we're going to break for lunch. Do we need a little more than 1 hour? Yes. By the time we get there, it'll be. All right. 1:30. Self-help day for lunch. Thank you, Jody. Thank you.